Hi everyone, I'm Noah and this is The Perceptions of Injustice. If you've been here long enough, then you know that I have covered the Dan Markel Murder-For-Hire case extensively with its details. You can find some of the videos linked in the description down below. And in this episode, I'm going to be analyzing and dissecting Wendi Adelson's writing podcast titled Wendi Adelson Tells the Story of Her Ex-Husband's Murder. Now, before we get into the podcast itself, let's start with the title. The title really rubbed me the wrong way and I couldn't really articulate why it did. And then after thinking about it, I realized that the level of detachment that's present in this sentence is the thing that's most disturbing to me. By framing it, the story told by Wendi Adelson, it kind of creates a level of detachment or desensitization from the tragedy itself. It feels like she's talking about a novel, something that really did not happen. It feels also as if she's making this tragedy all about herself. I mean, it's not weird for Wendi to do that. I think this is typical Wendi. She's making this tragic event all about her perspective and her story and her point of view, while there's much more than that. And Dan Markel was much more than just an ex-husband. It's about a life lost. It's about a family shattered. It's about boys who lost their father. It feels like they're missing the real heart of the matter by framing it this way. Wendi Adelson tells this story. I think a more empathetic and respectful way of titling the podcast would be to focus on the victim himself more, maybe. Okay, now let's start listening to the podcast.
On July 18th, 2014, someone shot my ex-husband in the head while he was pulling into our garage after he dropped our then 3- and 4-year-old sons off at school. I only found out this information when the police picked me up from a lunch date I was having with 2 girlfriends and insisted that I come with them back to the station and then interrogated me for 8 straight hours, because it's usually the ex-wife. I'm not really okay. I list the things that are going well when people ask this question.
Her phrase that says, I only knew about this when the officer came to the restaurant I was having a lunch or whatever. The use of I only knew about this for me was interesting. It's as if we asked her a question. Did you know about this from any other sources than the police? And then she replied, I only knew about this from when the police officer came to the restaurant. She could have phrased it, I first knew about this when the police officer. Why did she has to say I only knew about this? It feels like as if she had another source where she knew that this crime happened other than the police.
My children are thriving and happy. We live with my parents who are incredibly devoted to our well-being. I started my own immigration practice, and I just signed up to do a 1-year clerkship with the Federal 11th Circuit in September, which means I can get off Obamacare and have 1 year guaranteed of a steady income. But the truth is that I miss my life. I was a professor at Florida State University College of Law. I was so proud to be a public interest attorney and a mentor to my students. The novel I wrote about my clients' stories had just been chosen as the common read for all first-year students at FSU. In August, I was supposed to be the commencement speaker, and then I was supposed to take my brain cancer surviving just turned 70 father on a trip to Machu Picchu. And I don't get to complain that I didn't do any of those things because I am alive.
The whole thing that we just heard was all about her not being able to do the things that she was planning to do because this happened, and saying that of course I cannot complain because I'm alive. It's like passive aggressively saying no one would let me complain and explain my misery to the world. So now the instructor in the podcast was asking other listeners who are participating in the writing class what was their first impression of what Wendi just said, and one of them was very interesting for me what she said. We're gonna listen to it.
Okay, what do you guys think? What do you want to know more about?
We learn a lot about the narrator. We learn how smart she is. We learn how much she's done in this time, you know, where most people would be probably in bed crying and on drugs and medication. Something that I was curious about, if there's something in there that is causing her not to be able to really get any sympathy, or if she feels like she's not getting sympathy because it was an ex, or she's not allowed to grieve him. I'm so curious to see how the grieving process went.
What she got from the story was a lot of information about the narrator, of course, expected, how smart she is, how accomplished she is. I think this tells us really the level of humbleness that Wendi Adelson has. And she was curious why she wouldn't get any sympathy from others. Well, if you are listening to this, I will answer you. Her parents are the ones that ordered a hit and paid for it. And her brother was the one that's preparing the hit, logistics and everything.
After taking in all the comments, Wendi worked on her story at home. 2 weeks later, she came back with some of the answers to our questions. In her first story, she hinted at not feeling like she can publicly express how she really feels, a theme she repeated in this next story. In her writing, though, she seems to express how she really feels.
"10 months ago, someone killed the father of my children. First we got divorced, and then he got murdered. In casual conversations, I don't know whether to call him my ex-late spouse or my late ex-spouse, except that late ex-spouse sounds like latex spouse.
The audacity of this woman making jokes about her husband that died, and didn't even die in natural causes. He died in a horrific way. The cause of death on his obituary was homicide. It wasn't accident. It wasn't natural cause of death. Imagine the thought process in here. What happened? And she was like, what do I call him? Late ex-spouse or ex-late spouse. Her brain started making jokes randomly and told her this joke like, oh, it's like latex spouse. And then she took the decision to take this joke and like put it in her writing, say it out loud publicly. I mean, I guess bad jokes run in the family, for real. This tragedy revolves around her boys becoming orphans. I think it's human that our brains use humor to get through something, get through grief, whatever, sad things. But there's a difference between what you think about and what you say it out loud. How cold should you be to be able to make such a joke about the father of your children that died in such an horrific way?
We married when I was in my mid-20s, when I thought I could cheat the system and marry a man I lacked passionate love for because, hey, didn't that die anyway during marriage? I saw his intellect and big heart and thought he would make a wonderful father for my children. Our marriage dissolved after the children arrived, as the loneliness of being married to someone that didn't view me as an equal crept in.
So we heard her before express that Dan Markel was emotionally abusive towards her. And now she's saying that he didn't treat her equally. In the presence of such a horrific event, how are you able to still talk about this person's flaws? And let's say he really did not treat her equally, which I doubt, but let's say this is correct. Why would you say it out loud like that, especially when you are the cause of his passing? I mean, this is cold. This is really cold to be able to talk negatively about Dan Markel after everything that happened to him. Doesn't she think about his parents for a second? Wendi is really trying very hard to paint Dan as this monster. So Wendi wasn't satisfied enough with Dan passing away. She really needed to defame him after he was dead. She really needed to say those flaws about him to ruin his reputation. Him being dead is not enough for her. he has to be dead, and everyone has to know how such a monster he was to her. Honestly, it's giving Cersei Lannister vibes.
How? I mean, he didn't like fiction, so why read my novel? It was logic, not a lack of love.
She's still holding grudge on him because he did not read her novel. Imagine. What satisfies you, Wendi? What does it take to make Wendi Adelson forgive? Forgive Dan for not reading her novel. What does it take?
Feels sacrilegious these days, even to suggest something less than heroic about my latex husband, because he was murdered. He died violently and young, and likely at the hands of a professional killer.
It's very rare that she says the truth, but when she says it, it's beautiful. Yes, he died on the hands of a professional killer, that's right. That was hired by your brother, your mother, and your father. And yes, Charlie did hire a professional to do it because he thought by hiring a professional to do it, paying him money, he would be detached from the murder itself and he won't be physically there, so they have nothing on him. You have to put the person in the crime scene in order to convict him. That's what he told Katie Magbanwa when he was mentoring her in Dolce Vita. The legal genius Charlie Adelson, can't say that enough about him.
I turned on the news to find photos of my children with Nancy Grace, George Stephanopoulos saying my name in reference to our acrimonious divorce, and a picture my friend took when I was her maid of honor showed as evidence why I should be treated like a murder suspect and not the mother of 2 fatherless boys.
But this is not the reason why everyone treats you as a murder suspect. There's so many reasons, and if you are interested to know the reasons, there's a link in my description below to a video that shows you all the reasons why I think that Wendi Adelson was kind of involved in everything. It's everything that you did after, before, and during the murder. It's you, before the murder, hearing jokes from Charlie saying he hired a hitman, he wants to hire a hitman, you not stopping him, but bragging about it in front of Jeffrey Lacasse, your boyfriend. And then, on the day of the murder, you pass by the crime scene, and then you deny it in court. 2 days after Dan Markel passed away, she moved to Miami with her boys forever and never came back to Tallahassee. It's by you changing your kid's last name from Markel to Adelson, justifying it as, yeah, everyone saw them on Nancy Grace, with Nancy Grace. I mean, if anything, the cursed name here is not Markel, it's Adelson, and everybody knows that.
I sat on a bench last week to watch the boys play. An older woman sitting next to me commented on how adorable my boys are and asked, "What does your husband do?" I hate this question. I haven't yet said, he doesn't do much because he's dead, but I think it sometimes. I find when I tell people that my children's father died, they feel sad. But when they ask the follow-up questions and find out we weren't married, they seem to feel better. I don't.
Oh no, you don't feel better? That's a shame. After everything your parents has done for you, after everything Charlie has done for you, hired a hitman to get rid of your problem, and you're still not feeling better.
Wendi, in response to the prompt, what is the story you tell about your relationship with your mom?
My mom and I have lived together for almost a year. She is selfless, generous, loving, and beautiful. She once got turned down for Weight Watchers because she didn't have enough excess weight to be admitted to the program. She thinks she is stupid. My mom, who won the New York Spelling Bee for middle schoolers when she was only in the 6th grade. I'm so many of the things I am because of who my mom is and who she wants me to be. I was valedictorian of my high school. She seemed proudest that I graduated high school still a virgin.
So this is another aspect of the truth that Wendi is saying, which is rare, that she is who she is because of her mom. Yes, that's perfectly correct. You are who you are because of your mom. She molded you this way, and you also are an adult, and you are who you are because of you also.
Draw boundaries with my mom because lately there aren't any. She is caring for my children right now so that I can be here in class, more like a co-parent than a grandmother. But I accept it because as a former kindergarten teacher, she is so adept in that role. She taught my boys how to recite the 44 presidents, just like she taught me when I was 4. I see myself in them, reciting, receiving praise. She has completely changed her life because mine fell apart.
So she tried to put boundaries with her mom, but then accepted her as a co-parent because it works for her. And that's Wendi in a nutshell. She will do anything that would benefit her, even if the price was her boys, honestly.
My childhood friend Lisa told me this weekend that she never even knew I was unhappy in my marriage. I had no idea I hid it so well. I always thought that I had an expressive face, the kind that easily registered happiness and disappointments. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that most people think I am very happy all of the time. Because I smile.
You put on a show. Your mom said that about you also. It's not just us saying that.
Constantly to try to engage with people, make them smile too. I think this face is a kind of mask that I wear out of a life of endless practice, like a kind of muscle memory for the face. I can even remember one time learning that a friend's father had died, and upon hearing the news, I smiled. It was a bizarre reaction, since I loved my friend and her dad very much. We were 13, and I remember him making pancakes for us many a Sunday morning after a few of us slept over. More than 20 years later, I still feel like a freak show thinking back on that moment. If I'm a person that likes to be funny and to use humor and levity to engage with people, then is it an authentic or inauthentic response to smile at the news of something tragic? Am I deluding others or myself when I smile or laugh through the pain of a terrible time? Am I avoiding actually bathing in the grief I need to feel so that when time passes, I will have missed my chance to mourn? Danny used to tell me that everyone thought I was such a nice person and such a good person, but he was the only one that knew the truth about what a bad person I was. He was convinced I had deluded everyone but him.
Danny was right. Of course he was right. As he was right about your mom's emotion to not let your mom be alone with the kids. Danny was right about your mom. Danny was right about you too. And that's not just what Danny says. Your mom says that too, that you put on a very great show if you want to. We've seen you in action, not only your mom. I mean, what I hear is this monstrous Danny. He was abusive. He didn't treat me equally. I'm a helpless victim in front of his unfairness.
It should be intimate when a man cries in front of you while you hold each other, and it was, but I wasn't crying. Sometimes I feel like I'm all cried out. This year I told my small children that their father was dead and wasn't ever coming back. And a few nights ago, when a beautiful man teared up in my arms, I wondered if I could ever cry at something beautiful again. I shared a piece of writing with him I was trying out for class. It describes a scene where I am immensely sad. He tells me he was initially impressed with all that I have accomplished, but now he's more taken with what I have endured. I appreciate his words and wonder, why can't I be that woman on the spot? Why do I reserve the written word for a place where I can accurately and painfully express myself, and the in-person, real-life version for the Wendi show, jazz hands and all? I wish I could merge us so we could be less of a weirdo.
I think Wendi's working on a bigger story, more than just what happened, which was that her ex-husband was murdered. Her bigger story is about what it means for her to be authentic. Why does she laugh in the face of trauma? Does everyone? Or is Wendi wearing a mask she wants to take off?
She is.
She writes a lot about how people react when they hear her story. She also writes about her own reactions, how she wishes she could be as true in person as she is in her writing. So I spoke to Wendi about her experience in our class. How did she feel telling her story? And how did it feel to get our class's reaction?
You asked, how are we doing really? And I was shaking from head to toe, and I thought, okay, let's just do this. let's just dive in. I didn't have a plan to do it, but it just felt unavoidable. The words kind of just flew out of me, but then when I was done, I sat there and I couldn't look anyone in the eye, and I was sweaty, and I just thought, okay, now I've done it, now it's out there, now what?
I think she couldn't look anyone in the eye because she knows that this is all a lie, and she didn't want to see their reaction. Did they believe me or not? Was I successful in portraying myself as the victim and Danny as the monster he is or not? That's why she couldn't look anyone in the eyes, in my opinion. I think, honestly, listening to this makes me feel that if it didn't go the way it did for the Adelsons and they didn't go down, I think that, and they really got away with it, I think Wendi would have published a book called Wendi's Story, The Demise of My Latex Husband. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please let me know by liking, commenting, or anything that would let me know that you liked this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.